Example 2 says, below is a model park. Answer the questions to the best of your ability. The first question asks, what is the perimeter if the width is 200 feet and the area is 30,000 square feet? So we know area is equal to length times width when we're talking about a rectangle. And we know two of these values. So we know that the area is 30,000. So in the area formula, I'm going to replace area with 30,000. And we don't know what the length is, but we do know that the width is 200. So I'm trying to find a number that when I multiply it to 200, it gives me 30,000. And the way that we can solve for the unknown is by dividing both sides by 200. Now a trick when you're dividing by multiples of 10 is you can, if there's a 0 on the top and the 0 on the bottom, you can cancel them out. So essentially we're left with 300 divided by 2, which is equal to 150. So we end up finding that the length is equal to 150 feet. So that is not what the question is asking, though. The question is asking what is the perimeter. So we found the length. Now we're still needing to find the perimeter. So the perimeter is equal to 2 times the length plus 2 times the width. So we found that the length was 150, and we know that the width is 200. So that's equal to 300 plus 400, which is equal to 700 feet. So the perimeter is 700 feet. So that is our answer for number 1. Number 2 asks about how much of the park is covered with grass. Now here is where we will have to do some estimation, and we have to do some assuming as well. The way that you define the park and the way that I define the park might be different, but for the purposes of this activity, I'm going to define the park within this rectangle that I'm drawing in red here. Notice that that doesn't include some of the sidewalk and the grass patches outside of the sidewalks. So that is what I'm going to define as the park. You can define it differently if you'd like. So now that I've drawn my red rectangle in, it's asking what proportion or what percentage or how much of the park is covered in grass. And this is just eyeballing it. You know, we can see that this area here, that looks like pavement or concrete of some sort, and then there's more pavement around here, but it's probably safe to say that the majority of the park is covered in grass. So I've kind of colored in the areas that I think that look like concrete. And so I would probably say that about 85% of the park is covered in grass. Oh, I forgot to highlight, there seems to be like a body of water here. So maybe I should change it from 85, maybe let's say 80%. Now, if I wanted to change that into a decimal, how would we go about doing that? Well, let's see. So 80%, I want to, instead of writing the percent symbol, I'm going to write 80.0%. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the percent sign and I'm going to move the decimal place to the left 2 times. And this is going from percent to decimal. So if I moved it over 2 places, then that would give me 0.800. And, this is a preferential thing, but you can drop the zeros. So this is equivalent to 0.8. So same thing as 0.8 if I wanted to write it in decimal form. Question 3 asks, how much of the park will have shade in the summer? So basically anywhere we see a tree, that's going to have shade. This thing here, if you look at the legend, says it's like a dog ramp, so dogs can climb up that. That's going to cover some of the grass and provide shade as well, depending on how high it is, but it will still provide shade. And so if you look at the trees and maybe that ramp, I would estimate that that would be about maybe like 15% of the park. So 15% of the park will have shade. And let's convert 15%. So I'm going to write 15.0 and we have percent, but I'm going to drop the percent sign. And then we are moving the decimal place to the right twice. So that would be right here. So that's going to give us 0.150. And usually we drop the 0. And so we'd say this is 0.15. And that's how you'd convert 15% into a decimal. So question 4 says about how much of the park will have a covering other than grass. So if 80% of the park is covered in grass, that means that about 20%, because that's what's left over when you subtract from 100, so about 20% is going to have some kind of covering other than grass, if we estimated that correctly. So 20% of the park, and again, these are all just estimations, will have a covering other than grass. And if we follow what we've been doing before, I have 20%. I'm going to ignore the percent symbol and then move this over 2 spots. So that would be 0.200. And I could just drop the 2 zeros. So if I wanted to write that as a decimal, we'd say about 0.2 of the park will have a covering other than grass. Now, question 5 says, about how long is the bioretention Weir wall? So I'm going to go back up to our image, and the bioretention Weir wall is item number 7. And if you look at item number 7, it looks like the wall is this. I'm going to have to use a different color, so maybe let's try blue. It looks like the wall is this here, which is basically the value that we found in part 1 when we were talking about the length. And so it's not written here, but recall that the length was equal to 150 feet. So I'm going to abbreviate. BWW is about 150 feet. We found this in question 1. And about how long is the raised planter? So the raised planter has a length from here to here. If you look item number 10, that's the raised planter. And if you look at that as part of the whole length, I'm going to go ahead and estimate that to be about half of the bottom distance here. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about this here. So if you look at that red part on the bottom, the raised planter is about half that length. So we're just estimating here. And we know that the width from problem 1 is 200 feet. So if the raised planter is about half that, then we can say the raised planter is about half of that, which is 100 feet. Okay, and I will let you think about the reflection questions.